The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rural road as Emma Harris trudged home from school. At 9 years old, she carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence that only comes from surviving more than most kids her age should have to. Her worn backpack hung heavily on her small shoulders, filled with books and, curiously, a small set of tools wrapped in an old rag. A gift from her Uncle Mike. She hummed softly to herself, kicking at loose pebbles along the roadside when a sleek black Mustang GT caught her attention. It wasn't there this morning, and now its shiny surface looked oddly vulnerable with the hood popped open. A man in an expensive suit paced beside it, phone pressed to his ear, frustration clear in his voice. "I don't care what meeting I'm missing," he was saying. "I'm stuck on Route 9 with a car that won't start, and no mechanic can make it out here for hours." Emma slowed her steps, intrigued by the sight. The man looked out of place against the backdrop of the quiet town of Willow Creek. His perfectly tailored suit probably cost more than Uncle Mike made in a month at his garage. His dark hair was neatly styled, and even from a distance, Emma could spot the flash of an expensive watch on his wrist as he gestured in frustration. "Fine, I'll figure it out myself," he said, ending the call abruptly and shoving his phone into his pocket. He turned toward the car, staring at the engine, almost willing it to work. There was something about his helplessness that stirred Emma's natural instinct to help. Uncle Mike always said, "Knowledge means nothing unless you share it when someone needs it." "Excuse me, sir," Emma called out, walking up to the car with measured steps. "Are you having car trouble?" The man turned, surprise written all over his face as he looked down at the small figure addressing him. At 36, Alex Mitchell had built a fortune in New York's competitive real estate market. People feared his sharp business mind, and competitors quaked at the mention of his name. But here he was, defeated by a broken-down car, being approached by a child. "Just a small issue," Alex replied with a tight smile. "Nothing to worry about. Shouldn't you be getting home?" Emma shrugged, moving closer to peek under the hood. "I know a thing or two about cars. My uncle's a mechanic. He teaches me stuff." Alex chuckled. "That's cute, but this is a high-performance vehicle. It needs a professional." "Maybe," Emma said, pulling her backpack off. "But professionals are just people who know what to look for." Without waiting for permission, she leaned over the edge of the car, careful not to ruin her clean school clothes as she peered at the engine. Alex watched with a mix of amusement and growing astonishment as Emma's eyes narrowed in concentration. "When did it start having problems?" she asked, now all business. "About 20 minutes ago," Alex explained. "The engine began to overheat, and then it just died." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Did you notice any sweet smell, like syrup?" Alex blinked. "Yeah, actually." "How did you—" "It's your cooling system," Emma interrupted, pointing to a small puddle beneath the car that Alex hadn't even noticed. "See that leak? Your coolant's draining out. That's why it overheated." Alex stared at her, then at the puddle, and then back at the girl. Her confidence was disarming, her knowledge inexplicable. "How old are you?" he asked, still in disbelief. 9, Emma replied, already rummaging through her backpack. "I might have something that can help, at least for now." She pulled out a small roll of what looked like specialized tape and a packet of cooling system sealer. "This should patch it up until you can get to a real mechanic," she said, showing him how to apply it. "It won't hold forever, but it should get you to town." Alex, speechless, watched as she worked with surprising speed and skill. "You're amazing," he murmured, following her instructions to top off the radiator with bottled water. "All set," Emma said with a satisfied smile, wiping her hands on a rag from her kit. Give it about 10 minutes before you start the engine. You'll need to replace the coolant you lost. I'm Alex, by the way, he said, extending his hand somewhat awkwardly. Emma Harris, she replied, shaking his hand firmly. Nice to meet you, Mr. Mitchell. As they shook hands, Alex's gaze fell on the ring on Emma's finger, a worn ruby set in gold. Something about it tugged at his memory. That's an interesting ring, he said, his voice suddenly softer. Emma glanced down at the ring, her expression softening. It was my mom's. She said it's a symbol of an important promise. Alex's heart tightened. Where did she get it? Emma's face darkened for a moment. She died last year, she said quietly. I'm sorry, Alex said automatically, but his mind was racing. That ring. It felt familiar. Why? Why did looking at it stir something deep inside of him? The engine roared to life when they tried it, cutting off the moment. Emma grinned in satisfaction while Alex, still lost in thought, couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Something far beyond a simple roadside encounter. Let me give you a ride home, Alex offered, surprising himself. It's the least I can do. Emma hesitated only briefly before nodding. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. That would be nice. As they drove away, neither could have known that this chance meeting would unravel buried secrets, shaking the foundations of both their lives, and that it would eventually expose truths that powerful people had gone to great lengths to keep hidden. As the car rolled down the dusty country road, Emma looked out the window, her thoughts drifting back to the conversation with Alex. She couldn't help but wonder why the ring on her finger seemed to affect him so much. He had looked at it like he had seen it before, like it was tied to some memory he couldn't quite grasp. They arrived at Emma's modest house, tucked in the corner of a quiet neighborhood in Maplewood. The small two-story home was far from the luxury Alex was used to, but it had a warmth he couldn't ignore. The porch light flickered as Emma jumped out of the car. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Mitchell," she said, offering him a smile. "Please call me Alex," he replied, his voice a little softer than before. He watched her disappear inside, but something kept him in the car, a lingering feeling that this wasn't just some random encounter. He had to know more. The following day, Alex found himself thinking about Emma again. Her knowledge of cars, her confidence, and, most of all, that ring. He hadn't been able to shake the feeling that there was more to the story than met the eye. Determined to figure it out, he decided to stop by the Harris house after work. When he knocked on the door, Emma's uncle, Mike Harris, answered. A rugged, middle-aged man with grease stains on his hands and a no-nonsense attitude, Mike didn't seem too surprised by Alex's visit. After a quick introduction, Alex asked if he could speak to Emma. "She's out back, working on the old truck," Mike said, leading him through the house and out to the small yard behind. Emma was crouched beside a rusty pickup, covered in mud and tools. She looked up as Alex approached. "What brings you here, Mr. Mitchell?" "Alex," he corrected, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "I just wanted to thank you again for helping me with the car yesterday. I was thinking about what you said, about your mom's ring. I've seen that ring before." Emma's expression shifted, her usual confidence giving way to something more guarded. "You know about it?" she asked, looking up at him curiously. "I've seen it before," Alex repeated, his voice quiet. "It belonged to my mother." Emma's eyes widened. "Your mom had the same ring?" Alex nodded slowly, feeling a strange weight settle over him. "Yes, it's a long story. But that ring, it has a lot of significance to my family. My mother passed away when I was young, but I've seen that ring in her photos. It was always on her finger." Emma straightened up, wiping her hands on her jeans. It's my mom's. She told me it was a symbol of an important promise, she said, her voice small. She died last year. Alex's heart skipped a beat. You never told me your mom's name. Sarah Harris, Emma said quietly, meeting his gaze. She worked at the Sunshine Orphanage before she adopted me. At the mention of Sunshine Orphanage, Alex's pulse quickened. His mind raced back to his childhood, to memories he had long buried. He remembered his mother talking about an orphanage, a place where children were adopted out, some for good reasons, some for darker purposes. "Where did she adopt you from?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "She said she found me there when I was just a baby," Emma replied, pulling her knees to her chest. "But she never talked about the place much. Just that it closed suddenly, and she adopted me soon after." Alex stood still for a moment, processing the information. His father, Richard Reynolds, had been involved with several orphanages, making large donations under the guise of charity. But Emma's story felt different. Something about her words felt like a piece of a much larger puzzle he wasn't ready to see. "Why was Sunshine Orphanage shut down?" Alex asked, barely above a whisper. Emma's eyes narrowed in thought. "I don't know for sure, but I remember Mom mentioning it was forced to close due to financial problems. She never said much else." That was all Alex needed to hear. The pieces were slowly coming together in his mind, and he could no longer ignore the connection. His father, the powerful businessman, had been involved in orphanage acquisitions, but what if it wasn't just about money? What if there was more to this story, something far darker than he could have imagined? "Emma," Alex said slowly, his voice a mix of determination and caution, "there's something I need to tell you. I think your mother and my family might be more connected than you realize. And I think it might have to do with that ring." Emma looked up at him, her face a mix of confusion and curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I don't know yet," Alex replied, his voice tight. "But I promise I'm going to find out. And I'll help you figure out what really happened." Emma stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'd like that. I think it's time we found out the truth." And with that, a new journey began, one that would unravel secrets from the past, secrets buried deep within their families, and change both their lives forever. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the past was closing in on him. The more he thought about Emma's words, the more certain he became that something in his family's history had been buried, something they'd gone to great lengths to keep hidden. As the car rumbled down the road back to his apartment in downtown Boston, his mind replayed every detail Emma had shared. Emma's mother, Sarah Harris, had worked at the Sunshine Orphanage before adopting her, but the orphanage had closed suddenly, and Emma's adoption had happened soon after. The timing was too perfect. Alex's suspicions had grown stronger. He'd known his father, Victor Mitchell, had made large donations to several orphanages, but he never thought it was anything more than philanthropy. Now, he wasn't so sure. When Alex arrived at his apartment, he immediately began searching for anything that might explain the connections between his family and the orphanage. His father's files, meticulously organized, hidden in a secure cabinet, held the answers he sought. But there was something else, a nagging feeling that kept him from diving straight into them. He needed to speak with Emma again. There was more she needed to know. The next day, Alex called Emma. "I think it's time we meet again," he said. "I have some information I need to share." "Sure," Emma replied. "I'll meet you at the usual spot." The usual spot was a small cafe in the heart of Boston, where they'd met a few days ago to talk. As Emma arrived, Alex was already seated, his eyes scanning through papers that looked old, even by his standards. She slid into the seat across from him, raising an eyebrow at the stack of documents. "You've been busy," Emma said, a slight grin on her face. "I have to be," Alex replied. "There's too much I didn't know. Too many questions." He pushed a photo across the table toward her. It was a blurry image of what appeared to be a group of children standing in front of an old building. Emma squinted at the photo. "What's this?" "That's the Sunshine Orphanage. I found this in some of my father's old records." He took a deep breath before continuing. "This photo. It's dated a few weeks before the orphanage was closed. I think your mother was in it." Emma's eyes widened as she studied the photo. "Wait, that's my mom, isn't it?" "I think so. And I think my father knew her," Alex said, his voice tight. "But here's the thing. When I went through my father's records, I found something that doesn't sit right. There's mention of a special project, something related to children, and I think you were part of it." Emma sat back in her chair, processing what Alex had just said. "What do you mean, part of it?" "I'm not sure yet, but I believe your adoption wasn't a coincidence. I think it had more to do with my father's plans than he ever let on." Emma shook her head, her mind spinning. "You think my mom was involved in something shady? Something bigger than I know." "I don't want to jump to conclusions," Alex said quickly, "but I think it's time you know the whole truth about your mother, about what really happened at the orphanage." Emma felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had known her mother had secrets, but never this deep. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I think your mother's death wasn't just a random event. I believe it was part of something my father had planned for years," Alex replied, his words hanging in the air. Emma's heart raced. "You think my mom died because of something she was involved in?" "I don't know," Alex admitted. "But the more I dig, the more it seems like she was part of a larger scheme. I think the key to everything is in these files." He gestured to the papers in front of him. "What do we do now?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alex looked up, his expression serious. "We find out everything. Together. We need to know what happened, what's been hidden, and why my father is so determined to keep it buried." The weight of their new mission settled between them like a heavy fog. There was no turning back now. Alex and Emma were about to uncover secrets that not only linked their families, but also revealed a past that could shake the foundations of everything they knew. As they left the cafe, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. He scanned the street, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Still, a sense of unease crept up on him. Whoever had been hiding the truth about Emma's adoption and his father's involvement was clearly willing to go to great lengths to keep it quiet. They had no idea how dangerous their search for answers would become. The next few days felt like they were moving in fast forward. Alex barely slept, his mind constantly racing with new pieces of information. Every document he sifted through seemed to confirm the same troubling thing. His father's influence was far-reaching, and it seemed to stretch directly into Emma's life. But there was something else, a mystery within a mystery, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He met Emma again, this time at a more discreet location, a small park tucked away on the outskirts of the city. Alex didn't trust anyone right now, and he wasn't sure if his father had someone following him. "We need to be careful," Alex said as he looked around, making sure no one was close. "My dad knows I've been asking questions. I think he's on to us." Emma, sitting across from him on the park bench, nodded. "I get it. I've been getting weird phone calls at home. No one ever leaves a message, but the number keeps showing up on my caller ID." "That's not good," Alex muttered, rubbing his temples. "We have to move fast. The more we uncover, the more dangerous it becomes." He slid a folder across the table to her. Inside were documents, adoption records, legal papers, and photographs, things he'd managed to pull from his father's personal files. He knew it wouldn't be long before his father realized what he was up to. "Take a look at these," Alex said, his voice urgent. "This is the smoking gun." Emma hesitated, her fingers hovering over the papers, but she nodded and began flipping through them. Each page seemed to offer a new piece of the puzzle. She stopped at a photo of a group of children in front of a building that looked oddly familiar. This is the orphanage," she said, pointing to the photo. Alex leaned in. "Yeah, this was taken the day Sunshine Orphanage closed down. But look at the children. Your mother, I'm sure of it, she's in this photo. And do you see the man standing next to her?" Emma's eyes scanned the picture carefully. The man in the photo was tall, with dark hair and a stern expression. That's my mother's old boss," she said, her voice trembling. "Mr. Thompson. He ran the orphanage." Alex's eyes narrowed. "And what if I told you Mr. Thompson isn't just some old boss? What if he was working with my father?" Emma's face paled as she processed what Alex had just said. "What do you mean? You think Mr. Thompson and your dad were involved in something illegal?" "I think they were involved in something bigger than either of us could have imagined," Alex replied, his voice low. "This project my father was funding, it wasn't about charity. It was about control. And you were part of that plan, Emma." Emma sat back, the weight of Alex's words sinking in. "So my mom wasn't just trying to protect me? She was trying to keep me away from whatever it is your father was doing?" Alex nodded grimly. "Exactly. And now we have to figure out how to stop it. But we need proof. If we don't, my father will bury everything, and we'll never get answers." "I don't care what it takes," Emma said, determination hardening her voice. "I need to know the truth about my mother, about why she died, and why my life was part of whatever your father was planning." Alex looked at her, admiration and respect flooding his chest. She was stronger than he had realized, and more determined than anyone he had ever known. "We're in this together, Emma," he said, "and we'll find out everything. I won't let my father's lies destroy your life any longer." They both knew the road ahead would be dangerous. They were already up against a powerful man who had spent years building his empire on secrecy and manipulation. But they also knew they couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, and it was waiting for them to uncover it. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the park, Emma looked at Alex. "We have to find Mr. Thompson. He knows everything. He's the key." Alex nodded. "And I know where to find him." Alex and Emma stood up, their minds already racing with the next steps. The hunt for answers was just beginning, and they knew they had no time to waste. In the distance they could hear the faint hum of the city, but to them it felt as if they were on the edge of a new world, one where the past would no longer stay buried. They were ready to uncover the secrets that had been hidden for too long. As they walked away, the air around them felt charged with anticipation. The journey ahead would be treacherous, but Alex and Emma had already taken the first steps toward the truth. And nothing, not even the darkness of their past, would stop them now. The night was thick with tension as Alex and Emma made their way through the quiet streets of downtown. The only sounds were the rhythmic tap of their shoes against the pavement and the occasional car whizzing by in the distance. Emma's heart raced in anticipation and fear. They were about to confront the man who held the key to everything, Mr. Thompson, the former head of Sunshine Orphanage. "I've been digging around," Alex said, his voice low as they walked. "I found a lead." Thompson's been living in a quiet little neighborhood outside the city. He's kept a low profile for years, but I've got a feeling he's been watching us, or at least watching me." Emma nodded, her grip tightening around the strap of her backpack. "What if he's involved with your dad's plans? What if he knows something about my mom's death?" "I think he knows everything," Alex replied. "And I think he's afraid we're getting too close. That's why he's been hiding. But we have to talk to him, Emma. We can't turn back now." They reached the edge of the city and turned onto a quiet residential street lined with older houses. The neighborhood was peaceful, almost eerie, with streetlights casting long shadows along the sidewalks. Alex led Emma to a small, well-kept house at the end of the block. "This is it," he said, stopping in front of the porch. "Let's be careful. We don't know how he'll react." They hesitated for a moment, standing side by side in the cool evening air. Then, Alex stepped forward and rang the doorbell. A few moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a man in his mid-50s, wearing a simple cardigan and glasses. His face was lined with age, but his eyes still held a sharpness that made Emma's stomach flip. "Yes?" he asked, eyeing them suspiciously. "We need to talk to you, Mr. Thompson," Alex said, his voice steady. "It's important." The man's expression hardened. "I don't know who you are, and I don't have time for this," he replied, starting to close the door. Emma stepped forward quickly, blocking the door with her hand. "Please. It's about Sunshine Orphanage." "It's about my mom," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The mention of the orphanage made Thompson freeze. He looked between Alex and Emma, his face betraying a flicker of recognition. "Your mother," he trailed off, his voice suddenly quiet. "Sarah Harris." Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "Yes. She worked at Sunshine. You were the head of the orphanage. You knew everything. You know what happened." Thompson swallowed hard. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't lie," Alex snapped, his patience thinning. "We know about the project. We know you were working with my father. The truth is coming out, Thompson. You can't hide from it anymore." Thompson stepped back, glancing nervously over his shoulder as if considering running. But instead, he seemed to deflate, his shoulders slumping in resignation. "Come in," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll tell you everything." Inside, the house was dimly lit, with old furniture that seemed to have been untouched for years. Thompson led them to a small sitting room, where he motioned for them to sit. He took a deep breath before speaking. "I wasn't always a bad man," he began, his voice shaky. "I took that job at the orphanage because I thought I could make a difference. But when Victor Mitchell got involved, everything changed. He had big plans, plans that went way beyond simple adoptions." Emma's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Thompson looked at her, his face filled with regret. "Your mother, Sarah, she had no idea. She was just doing her job. But Victor used the orphanage as a front. He wanted children like you, children he could control, children he could use for his research. And your mom, she found out the truth. That's why she tried to protect you. She knew too much." Alex's stomach turned. What was the research? What was my father really doing? "Victor was obsessed with genetics," Thompson explained, his voice trembling. "He believed he could create a new generation of perfect children. That's what the project was all about. But it wasn't just about science. It was about power. He wanted to control everything, even the future." "Control the future?" Emma repeated, trying to process his words. Thompson nodded. He needed children who were genetically compatible with him, who could be molded into whatever he wanted. And that's where you came in, Emma. You were part of the plan. But your mother, she didn't want you to be a part of that. She fought to get you out of it. She gave up everything to protect you. Why didn't she ever tell me? Emma asked, her voice breaking. Why didn't she warn me about any of this? She was trying to keep you safe, Thompson said, his eyes full of regret. But she couldn't protect you forever. And once she died, Victor's plans went into motion. He didn't just want you gone. He wanted to erase everything that tied you to him. He was willing to destroy everything, including your life. Alex leaned forward, his mind racing. What happened to Elizabeth? My sister. The one my father kept hidden? Thompson looked away, his expression darkening. Elizabeth. She was part of the plan too. But she didn't survive. They tried to manipulate her, but she was too fragile. Your father didn't care about her. She was just another piece in his game. Emma's heart sank. So I wasn't the only one. There was another child, a twin. Thompson nodded sadly. Yes. But Elizabeth didn't make it. And your mother, she didn't want you to ever know that. The truth hit like a ton of bricks. Emma felt numb, her mind spinning with all the revelations. But how do we stop him? She whispered. You can't stop him alone, Thompson replied quietly. Victor's too powerful. But maybe, just maybe, you can expose him for what he really is. And you have to do it before he comes after you. The weight of Thompson's words hung heavily in the air. They knew now that the battle for the truth was far from over. But they also knew that together they could take on the secrets that had been buried for so long. The question was, were they ready for what came next? Alex and Emma sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing the weight of everything they had just learned. The man who had once been Emma's protector, the one who had worked at the orphanage alongside her mother, had just shattered the illusion they had both been living under. Emma's entire life had been built on lies, and now she was forced to face a truth so dark, it felt like it might swallow her whole. How do we expose him? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How do we make the world see what he's done? Alex's jaw tightened as he looked over at her. We have to go to the authorities. We can't take this on by ourselves. But we need irrefutable evidence. That's the only way we'll stand a chance. Emma nodded slowly, but the fear in her eyes betrayed the uncertainty she was feeling. What if they don't believe us? What if we're just two kids who stumbled into something way bigger than we can handle? Alex leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. We'll make them believe us. But first, we need to find the evidence that ties everything together. And we need to do it fast. My father's already looking for us. I can feel it. They stood up from their seats, determination solidifying in both of them. It was clear that they couldn't afford to wait any longer. Time was running out, and the more they delayed, the more dangerous things would get. Over the next few days, Alex and Emma dug deeper into the labyrinth of records and documents they had found. Thompson had given them a lead, a list of names and a set of coded files buried deep in Victor Mitchell's private offices. It was the breakthrough they needed, but they couldn't shake the nagging feeling that someone was always one step behind them. We need to find out where these files are hidden, Alex muttered, staring at the screen in his dimly lit apartment. If we can get to them before anyone else does. Emma stood beside him, running her fingers through her hair. I just keep thinking about how much my mom must have known, how she kept all this from me. It's like she was trying to protect me from something too big to even understand. Alex turned to look at her. She did protect you, Emma. She gave up everything to keep you safe from Victor. And now it's our turn to finish what she started. A few hours later, Alex and Emma were on their way to an old storage facility just outside the city. Thompson had told them that the files they needed were hidden there, sealed away in an old warehouse rented by Victor Mitchell himself. It was their last shot at finding the truth. The storage facility was tucked behind a row of warehouses, far from the prying eyes of the public. The area was quiet, too quiet, and the sense of danger seemed to grow with every step they took. "Stay close," Alex warned as they made their way toward a nondescript building at the back of the lot. "I'm not sure how much time we have before someone notices we're here." They slipped inside the facility, the air musty and filled with the smell of old boxes and forgotten memories. Their footsteps echoed in the empty space as they made their way to the back of the warehouse, where a row of steel lockers stood. Thompson had described the locker number where the files were hidden, but it wasn't marked. They had to figure out which one held the key to everything. "This is it," Emma said, pointing to one of the lockers. "It feels like this is where we're supposed to be." Alex took a deep breath and pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Locked," he muttered. "There's got to be a way to open it. Maybe there's a code or a key." Just as he finished speaking, the sound of a car engine revving outside made them both freeze. Alex's eyes darted to the door. "Someone's coming." Without a second thought, Alex pushed the locker door open using brute force, a loud screech echoing through the building. The door gave way, and inside they found a stack of papers, thick with documents. Their hands trembled as they flipped through the first few pages. What they saw made their blood run cold. "Victor wasn't just building an empire," Alex whispered, eyes scanning the papers. "He was creating something much darker." Emma leaned in, her face pale. "These are adoption records, but they're not for children. They're for embryos. My mother was trying to stop this experiment." The documents outlined detailed plans for genetically engineered children who were meant to be the perfect heirs to Victor Mitchell's legacy. But as Emma read further, her breath caught in her throat. The names of those involved in the project included prominent doctors, scientists, and even government officials. "They were playing God," Emma said, her voice shaking. "They were creating us. Creating people like me." Alex clenched his fists, the weight of the documents in his hands heavy with the truth. "We need to get these to the press," he said, determination flashing in his eyes. "This is it. This is everything we need." But as they moved toward the door, a sharp voice echoed from the hallway. "You didn't think I wouldn't notice, did you?" They turned, both startled, to see a man standing in the doorway. Victor Mitchell. His face was twisted with rage, and his eyes glinted with the kind of cold fury Alex had seen only once before. "Victor," Alex said, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "It's over." Victor took a step forward, his hand outstretched. "Not yet," he said softly. "You have no idea how deep this runs." The final confrontation had begun. Emma and Alex now knew the truth, but the question remained: would they survive long enough to expose it? The darkness that Victor had tried to bury was about to rise, and they had to decide whether they would let it consume them, or fight back and take the power from those who had abused it for so long. The air in the warehouse was thick with tension as Victor Mitchell stepped closer, his eyes cold and filled with malice. The door slammed shut behind them, and Alex could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on him. There was no turning back now. "I knew you two would come looking," Victor said, his voice calm but deadly. "You think you can take me down with these?" He gestured to the documents in Alex's hands. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Alex's heart raced, but he stood firm. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," he said, his voice steady. "It's over, Victor. You can't hide behind your lies anymore. The truth is out." Victor's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You think you've won? You think anyone will believe you? A couple of kids with nothing but old papers and half-baked stories? You have no idea what I've built." Emma stepped forward, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "We know exactly what you've built. A legacy of manipulation, of control. You've taken lives, Victor, destroyed families. And now it's time for you to face the consequences." Victor's smile faded. "You're naive, Emma. Do you really think the world cares about a few orphans and some misplaced embryos? People don't care about what happens to the powerless. They only care about power. And I have it all." He took a step closer, his gaze never leaving Emma and Alex. "You don't know what's at stake here. You're just pawns in a game that's been played for decades." Alex clenched his fists. He had heard enough. "That may be true. But what you've forgotten is that even pawns can topple kings. You've underestimated us." Victor's expression flickered with uncertainty. For a moment, it seemed like the facade of control was slipping. But he quickly regained his composure. "It's too late. You think exposing me will change anything? My influence reaches further than you'll ever know. There are people in high places who will protect me." "We'll see about that," Alex shot back, his mind racing. He knew they needed more than just words to stop Victor. They needed backup. They needed leverage. "Emma," Alex said quietly, his voice low enough that Victor couldn't hear, "call the press. I've got the contact for a reporter who's been investigating my father for years. We need to get the truth out before he has the chance to bury it again." Emma nodded, already pulling her phone from her pocket. As she typed the message, Alex's thoughts turned to the files in his hand. They were more than just documents. They were the key to exposing everything. But would they be enough? Victor seemed to sense the shift in the air. "You think you can just walk out of here with those papers? You have no idea what I'm capable of," he warned, his voice suddenly sharp. Alex stepped closer to him, narrowing the distance. "We're not walking out of here. You are. And if you think you can stop us, you're wrong." Just as Victor took a step back, clearly about to escalate the situation, the sound of sirens rang out in the distance. The high-pitched wail grew louder by the second, and Victor's face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he spat, his gaze flicking between Alex and Emma. "You think you've won, but you've only just begun to see what I've built." Before he could react further, a team of police officers burst into the warehouse, their weapons drawn and their uniforms sharp against the dim lighting. Alex could feel the relief rush through him, knowing they had made it just in time. "Victor Mitchell, you're under arrest for multiple charges of fraud, human rights violations, and conspiracy," one of the officers announced as they advanced toward him. Victor's eyes widened, and for a moment he looked vulnerable, stripped of the power he had clung to for so long. But his gaze hardened once more as the officers took him into custody. "You think this changes anything?" Victor sneered, his voice low as they cuffed him. "You're too late. This is just the beginning of the war, and you're not ready for what's coming next." Alex and Emma exchanged a glance, both of them feeling the weight of his words, but neither of them willing to back down. They had fought for too long, uncovered too many truths to stop now. As the officers led Victor out of the warehouse, Alex turned to Emma. "It's over," he said, though the words felt heavy. "We've won." Emma looked at the documents in his hands, and then at the growing number of officers arriving on the scene. "It's over for now," she corrected him, a determined fire in her eyes. But the fight isn't just about exposing Victor. It's about making sure nothing like this ever happens again. It's about protecting people like us. Alex smiled faintly, the weight of the past few weeks starting to settle into something more manageable. You're right. We've won the battle. Now, we fight for the future. And as they stood together, watching as the police took Victor Mitchell away, they both knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a much larger fight. The battle to expose the darkness, to bring truth into the light, was far from over. But they were ready. For the first time in years, they felt like they were on the side of justice, and they would do whatever it took to see it through to the end.